Hello, welcome to the single session vlog. My name is Alicia, and this is the vlog where we talk about all things connected to single session. Today we are in downtown Hamilton, Ontario in Canada. We are on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, bound by the dish with one spoon wampum. So today I want to revisit an earlier theme which has to do with the why in the world we would decide to do single session therapy, which a lot of people really question. Now, I have been saying for a long time that doing single session therapy is actually an act of resistance. It's an act of resistance against all of those dominant narratives and all of those dominant discourses about what mental health should be, what mental health should look like, about how people should access services, about the role of the clinician, about all of those things. But the reason that I think that it's the most important thing when it comes to single session therapy is having to do with accessibility. Now, we know that historically speaking, that mental health services have not been accessible to many, many people. And the people where it has been the least accessible for are often those who are marginalized, often people of color, often people who do not come from a traditional Western European background or set of values. Now, what this means then is that if we are going to revamp the system, we have to have a service that supports it, and we also have to have a service that supports the system that is being revamped. This is why at times when people talk about single session therapy, they have a difficult time distinguishing between whether this is actually a service model or a clinical model. I believe that it's both. I believe that it's one of the few things out there that actually work in tandem together, system and service. So, why is this important when we think about things like accessibility? Accessibility and barriers to accessibility always go hand in hand. Now, we know there are lots of barriers to accessibility. One of them is time. A lot of people, me included, just would not have the time to commit to 10 sessions, 20 sessions, 30 sessions in the course of life. I don't think that this makes me not wanting to do therapy or not wanting to change or anything like that. What it just makes me is busy. What it makes me is having other things that I want to spend my time on. This is okay. I don't believe necessarily that this should be judged. Now, I am aware that I occupy a very privileged space in society and in culture. So if it's difficult for me with all of my privilege and all of my socioeconomic status and all of my education and all of those kinds of things, imagine what it's like for other people who don't have the same level of privilege, who are just trying to make ends meet, who are coming to this community and to this country from other places where they are in the process of transitioning, where English isn't their first language. All of those kinds of things get in the way from people accessing services in the way that the dominant Western narrative thinks that they should. The other thing that I think is just so important to be recognizing has to do with this being an intervention in and of itself. I've been doing a lot of work with people like Peter Cornish and Stepped Care, who believes that if you change the system, that systemic change is in and of itself a social justice intervention, because we are allowing the service, we are allowing conceptions of mental health to be so much more accessible to so many people. Now, that's the systemic part of it. The clinical part of it, the efficiency, the effectiveness, is also where people struggle a lot. Everybody is on board with this idea that we should be seeing more people and it should be easier for more people, but not a lot of people buy in or have difficulty buying into the idea that single session therapy can also be effective. Now, what I think needs to happen is we need to adapt to the changing system. So if everybody can be on board with the idea that the system needs to change so that it's more accessible, then that also means that what has to happen in the session has to change too. I believe that needs to start with the people who are in the session. So that means that clinicians need to fundamentally change their own perceptions and their own perspectives about mental health in the same way that the system does. We need to be working together to support each other so that we can truly make a difference and change the way that not only we are doing and practicing mental health therapy, but also in the way that it's being received and perceived by the people who we all want to help the most. That's all for today. I hope you join me again in 2 weeks.